Hey, weary wanderer of the wide-awake night, loosen your shoulders, let your eyes grow as heavy as the iron keys on a monk's belt, and prepare to float gently backward, centuries backward, into a world of low walls, lower ceilings, and the lowest possible excitement permitted by church statute. Tonight we crack open the creaking oak door of St. Cuthbert's Abbey, a modest, Benedictine house somewhere in northern England around the year 1287. It is a place where thrills come carefully rationed, like butter during Lent, and where nothing louder than a cough dares disturb the vaulted hush. You will discover that the daily life of these cloistered souls is less an adventure and more a beige blanket of repetition, warmth, and the occasional existential draught. But before we tuck ourselves beneath that blanket, a small ritual: slide the brightness on your phone down to candle glow, maybe switch on a bedside fan so it hums like distant wind through monastery eaves, and if you'd like, leave a comment below letting me know from which modern hamlet you're tuning in. I promise the monks won't judge. They haven't updated their opinion on anything since the Fourth Crusade. Now draw in one long, slow breath, release it like incense curling toward a damp stone ceiling, and follow me past the threshold where time walks in stocking feet. Chapter 1, the Matins bell that everyone hates. You expected the first sound of the day to be birdsong or perhaps a rooster with boundary issues. Alas, you were wrong. It is 2:58 a.m. and the Matins bell is already complaining. It doesn't ring so much as groan, a rusty, bronzy yawn that says, "Get up, sinners," in a tone only marginally kinder than a battlefield trumpet. You peel yourself off a straw mattress that crackles like autumn leaves and wonder if medieval thread count can be negative. Your cell, not the prison kind, just the bedroom the size of a coffin kind, is lit by a moonbeam fat enough to trip over. Robe on, sandals located, left sandals still damp for reasons no one investigates. You shuffle into the cloister walk, joining 40 bleary figures who resemble burlap ghosts queued for judgment. No one speaks. Speaking before dawn ranks somewhere between coveting thy neighbour mule and starting a small heresy on the scale of Benedictine misdemeanours. So instead you communicate by competitive sighing. Brother Oswin sighs like collapsing bellows. Brother Peregrine manages a sigh that says, "I memorized Leviticus for this." You sigh back, louder, and consider it a moral victory. Together you converge on the chapel, a cold limestone box with ambitions of grandeur. Candles shiver in their sconces. Someone coughs in Latin. And for the next 90 minutes you chant psalms in a key best described as somnolent minor. Your voice vibrates the ribcage, your feet ache politely, and your stomach files a formal complaint about breakfast tardiness. Chapter 2, Breakfast, also known as Please Let There Be Porridge. By the time the second bell rings, Lord's at a merciful 5:15, the sky is paler than milk, left too long in the sun. You process to the refectory, a hall where echoes go to breed. There is a long table of wood exhausted by centuries of elbows, and upon it sits your culinary destiny, a single cauldron of barley porridge and a stack of trencher bread cut so thick it could stop an arrow. Choice is a sin here, or at least heavily frowned upon, so everyone receives the same ladle of beige optimism. You take your seat, wait for the abbot's prayer, 37 words, 5 of them humility, and dig in. The porridge is warm, which is its primary virtue. It tastes faintly of last night's peas and decidedly of tomorrow's, because the cauldron is rarely scoured with anything fiercer than self-reproach. Conversation is forbidden except for readings from the Rule of St. Benedict, delivered by Brother Athelred, whose voice has 2 settings, drowsy drizzle and penitential thunder. This morning he opts for drizzle, reciting chapter 42 on the dangers of frivolous laughter. The irony of banning laughter while everyone wrestles the same rebellious spoonful does not register. Irony won't be invented for another 300 years. You finish, wipe the bowl with bread, and feel approximately 3% less hungry than when you started. A rousing success. Chapter 3. Work, period. 1 scribal purgatory. Sunrise finally smears pink across the horizon as you trudge toward the scriptorium. Here, the air smells of lamp oil, oak gall ink, and the eternal frustration of misspelling psaltery on calfskin parchment that cost more than a horse. Your task, to copy the Acts of the Apostles until supper or permanent blindness, whichever arrives first. You dip quill, whisper a prayer for steady hands, and begin. Each letter must be perfect, because parchment forgives nothing, and Brother Simon the proofreader forgives even less. Simon lurks 2 desks down, eyes narrowed like a suspicious cat, ready to pounce on any abbreviation lacking its titular bar. You hate him a little and love him a little for caring so much. Hours pass. Outside, lay brothers tend sheep and repair walls. Inside, you wage silent war against inkblots. Every so often a draught slithers under the door, and the entire room shivers in unison, quills held aloft like startled hedgehogs. Monastic life is a symphony of micro-disasters, spilt ink, cracked pens, a sneeze at the wrong moment turning Dominus into something anatomically improbable. At terse 9 a.m., the bell rescues you for a brief prayer break. You stand, stretch spine and spirit, and wonder how many illuminated capitals it would take to illuminate your mood. Answer: more than you have time for. Chapter 4. The Garden of Earthly Mise. After prayer comes utilitas communis, communal usefulness, which in your case means weeding the herb garden. The Abbey, S-patch of green, is a rectangle of enthusiastic dirt, bordered by a low wall that keeps nothing out except ambition. You kneel among sage, rue, and something Brother Alaric insists is medicinal, yet smells like wet regret. The work is honest, repetitive, meditative. Everything monastic writers later claim leads to spiritual clarity. Mostly it leads to muddy knees and an intimate acquaintance with earthworms. Nearby, Sister Beatrice from the adjoining convent collects calendula blossoms with a grace that makes you self-conscious about your weed-yanking technique. Today's feast: lentil pottage thick enough to mortar a castle wall, and 1 boiled onion that slides around your bowl like a bar of soap. Brother Athelred reads chapter 7 on humility, emphasizing how monks should count themselves worse than anyone else. The lentils assist by reminding you that hope is seasoning you cannot afford. Afterward, you scrape bowls, wash trenchers, and line up for confession, because if you haven't sinned by noon, you're either a liar or asleep. Your confession list is short: pride in competitive sighing, mild loathing of Brother Simon, fleeting envy of Sister Beatrice's botanical grace. Absolution is swift. Penance is 3 Ave Marias and an extra hour illuminating capital letters tonight. You suspect Brother Simon lobbied for that last part. Chapter 12. Friday afternoon. Brewing lessons and the alchemy of almost ale. Post-incident, you're reassigned to the brewery, a timber-framed shed redolent of malt, smoke, and penance. Brother Godfrey, master brewer, explains the rules while stirring a mash the colour of optimism left out in rain. Rule 1. No tasting before Vespers. Rule 2. If it hisses, bless it. Rule 3. Never name the yeast. Attachment breeds idolatry. You shovel spent grain into troughs for pigs who will one day thank you by becoming feast day bacon. Steam fogs your tonsure. Hops perfume your robe. There's a moment, stirring the copper, when bubbles rise like tiny benedictions and you swear the whole Abbey exhales contentedly. The Middle Ages may lack central heating, but it compensates with warm beer hugs. Chapter 13. Saturday, Market Day Light. Once a fortnight, 2 monks, today you and Brother Peregrine, escort a donkey cart to the nearby village of Windlesham, population 73 humans, 312 chickens, 1 universally loathed goose. It's a 4-mile walk through hedgerows, puddles and gossip. Pilgrims overtook this road last week. Today it is just you and Peregrine debating whether St. Mildgith S. Fox counts as a true miracle or an early example of conflict mediation. At Windlesham, you barter herbal salves and surplus onions for necessities, beeswax, lamp wicks, and scrap parchment. A smith offers you a dented helm in exchange for prayers against gout. Peregrine accepts, helm riding the donkey like a confused metal turtle. Village children trail you, fascinated by robes, mobile curtains, and tonsures, unfinished haircuts. One lad asks if you're married to God. You begin theological nuance. He interrupts, sounds complicated, and runs off. Evangelization score, ambiguous. Return trip features a drizzle, a tireless goose escort, and Brother Peregrine composing haiku in Latin, ill-advised. You arrive by none, unload supplies, and endure Brother Simon's sigh at the parchment quality. Apparently, goosepeck dents violate calligraphic chastity. Chapter 14. Saturday Night, Illuminated Apocalypse, Miniature Edition. Free time, rare as meat in Lent, finds you adding marginalia to Revelation, specifically a dragon chasing a monk who suspiciously resembles Brother Simon. You permit yourself this subversive joy because tomorrow you'll confess anyway. Lamp oil gutters low, quill scratches softer than rainfall. You wonder if centuries hence someone will study these pages, note the cheeky dragon, and feel a flicker of kinship across the abyss of years. The thought is scandalously comforting, almost prideful, so you balance it with a muttered Gloria and blot away excess ink. Chapter 15. Sunday, Public Mass and the Pilgrim Parade. Sundays welcome outsiders, villagers, travellers, the occasional itinerant minstrel hoping for bread. The nave fills with murmurs, wool cloaks steaming in candle heat. You sing the Kyrie, your voice joins a tapestry of accents, timbres, and off-key determination. For once, Benedictines, peasants, and that one goose share acoustics. After Mass, pilgrims queue for blessings. You hand out crosses of palm wood, listen to tales of distant shrines, and accept rumours about a northern hermit who rides a bear. Likely hyperbole. Bears prefer management positions. Dinner is marginally generous chicken broth, with honest-to-goodness chicken. Conversation still banned, but smiles sneak across the table like smuggled spice. Chapter 16. Sunday evening, stars, silence, and the slow collapse of time. Vespers conclude under a violet sky stitched with early stars. You wander the garth, cool grass whispering under sandals. Somewhere a late bell rings in Windlesham. The goose is silent at last or plotting. Inside your cell you unfurl the new scrap parchment. Goose dented, yes, but eager to hold words. You jot a single line. Even boredom hums God if you lean close enough. You tuck it in your psalter, blow out the candle, and let darkness fill the room like ink fills a well. Sleep arrives, gentle as monks' footsteps. Beyond the Abbey walls, history thunders on, kings scheming, wars brewing, continents yawning awake. Here, time tiptoes. And in the hush, between 2 bells, you remember why you came. Not to escape the world, but to hear its heartbeat slowed to a lullaby. Part 3, Snowfall, Surprise Audits, and the Candle. That almost ended Christmas opening. Whisper. Curl deeper beneath your blanket, night voyager. Outside, a medieval winter sharpens its claws on the Abbey walls, but inside we keep toasty company with parchment prayer and an endless supply of lukewarm optimism. Tonight we glide through another stretch of small-scale drama at St. Cuthbert, 7 days stitched together with frost, flickering candles, and the unshakable suspicion that peace is really just boredom wearing mittens. Chapter 17. Monday, First Flakes and Foreboding. Matins feels colder than usual, breath blooming in little spectral puffs as the choir chants Psalm 51, like a collective apology you can see in the air. By Lords, the first snowflakes wander through the cloister garth, lazy, tentative, then multiply like footnotes in a scholastic argument. Breakfast offers barley plot twist, brightened by a swirl of yesterday's honey, courtesy of Brother Peregrine's experimental beekeeping. The honey crystallizes into tiny diamonds. Everyone pretends not to notice the luxury, but spoons clink faster. Work period assigns you to firewood duty. The woodshed resembles a collapsed game of pick-up sticks. You and Brother Cedric stack logs while snow whispers down, cloaking the orchard and your tonsures alike. Cedric muses that each flake is an angel's sigh. You muse that angels could invest in insulation. Chapter 18, Tuesday, Surprise Audit, aka the Bishop arrives. Nothing says fun like an episcopal visitation. Word reaches the Abbey at prime, Bishop William of Hexham 3 miles out, entourage in tow, intent on inspecting finances, morals, and, worst of all, Latin declensions. Panic protocol engages. Brother Simon leads a last-second proofreading crusade, hunting errant commas as if souls hang in the balance. They might. Lay brothers scrub flagstones until they reflect torchlight. You cow dispatched to the brewery to hide experimental batches labelled Godfrey S. Reckless Double Strength. The bishop arrives, swaddled in sable, cheeks flushed Benedictine red from wind. His eyes scan everything like twin abacuses. The abbot bows, monks bow. U47, sensing authority, bows her head halfway through chewing hay. Inspection highlights. Bishop pronounces the herb garden edifying, though overfond of fennel. He catches Brother Athelred squint reading the martyrology without his spectacles, issues stern lecture on ocular humility. Scriptorium earns cautious praise until he discovers your marginal dragon. You brace for doom. Instead he chuckles, tracing the inked tale. A reminder, he murmurs, that the devil may lurk in margins. You're unsure if it's compliment or citation. Evening meal upgrades to fish again, diplomatic trout, served with barely fermented ale. The bishop blesses everyone, including the ale, which fizzes in gratitude. Overnight, parchment copy quotas triple to impress him further. Monks groan beneath blankets, dreaming of merciful illiteracy. Chapter 19. Wednesday. Roofs, rain, and rapid repairs. Snow turns to sleet, then rain, and the abbey roof responds by weeping into the nave. You join a bucket brigade, catching drips beside stone saints who gaze downward with damp sympathy. Brother Oswin scrambles onto the tiles, patching holes with wooden shingles and unflappable faith. From below you monitor his progress, praying he doesn't reenact Icarus with fewer feathers. He doesn't. The leeks slow to a contemplative plink, suitable for meditative purposes. Dinner is leek soup, appropriately punny. As bowls empty, the abbot announces a day of fasting next week. None are surprised. Winter pantries shrink faster than Cedric's patience with frozen ink. Chapter 20, Thursday night. The infirmary's chorus of coughs. Brother Cedric's angel snow musings earn him a spectacular head cold. He is relegated to the infirmary, 3 cots, 1 smoky brazier, and Sister Joan, healer extraordinaire, whose remedies range from sensible, time tea, to theatrical, plaster of mustard, and mystery. You assist as infirmarian's scribe, logging temperatures, warmish, phlegm hues, regrettable, and Cedric's delirious quotables. Tell Saint Mildgith the fox owes me a blanket. Candlelight quivers against wattle and daub walls. Outside, wind claws like a penitent seeking re-entry. Near midnight, Sister Joan orders you to read psalms aloud. Apparently scripture frightens fevers. Cedric drifts asleep mid-psalm, snoring in Gregorian mode. You follow soon after, chin on chest, quill still in hand. Chapter 21. Friday. Chant practice and the note that escaped. Cedric recovers. The choir, however, does not. Bishop Williams scheduled a return visit for Candlemas, expecting heavenly harmonies. Rehearsals intensify under precentor Hugo, a man who treats semitones like moral failings. You rehearse the Gloria 32 times. On attempt 29, Brother Peregrine's voice cracks, releasing a squeak that ricochets off vaulted stone like a startled bat. Hugo stares as if deciding which heresy this qualifies as. Peregrine blushes the colour of liturgical red. Rehearsal continues. Confidence limps. Chapter 22. Saturday. Dawn, embers, and almost disaster. Pre-matins darkness. A stray ember from the night watch brazier lands on scrap parchment, incubating a rebellious glow. Brother Simon spots it as tendrils of smoke lick the scriptorium rafters. Chaos, but measured, monastic chaos, no shouting, just urgent, psalm-level whispering. Buckets of brewhouse water quench the flare before it graduates to conflagration. Casualties, 1 unwritten folio and half a bottle of Godfrey S double strength pressed into service as emergency extinguisher. The room smells like soggy malt and close calls. In thanksgiving for averting catastrophe, the abbot schedules an extra hymn. Simon thanks you for fetching water faster than anyone. Rare praise. You decide not to mention you were motivated by fear your dragon doodle would die unread. Chapter 23. Saturday evening. Snow returns, candles dwindle. Supplies run thin. Tallow candles shrink to nubs. Only beeswax reserves remain, guarded for liturgical high days. Monks navigate corridors by faith and muscle memory, stubbing toes in pious silence. You volunteer for candle-making tomorrow, an excuse to linger near warm cauldrons. Brother Godfrey approves, provided you promise not to sip melted tallow. One regrettable incident is enough for any century. Chapter 24. Sunday night. Reflections under a half moon. Compline ends. Bells hush. You step into the cloister garth. Snow hushes the world white. Half moon balancing on a furze silhouette. Your breath curls, candle thin. You recall the ember, the bishop's chuckle, Cedric's fever dream apology to a fox, and realize the Abbey's peace is stitched from near misses and near miracles, a roof rescued, a page spared, a voice cracked yet carried on. Inside you note the week S events in the chronicle margin. Gratia pluit sicut nix. Grace falls like snow. Letters dry, shiny in lamplight. You blow out the flame and watch darkness knit itself around the words, protection enough until dawn. Sleep settles soft as fresh parchment. And somewhere beyond timbers and tiles, Bishop William dreams of a dragon in the margins, proof that even auditors entertain wonder given time. Ettle in, moon-minded friend. Draw the quilt until it folds like monastery stone around your shoulders. Dim every glowing screen to the hush of tallow, and let your thoughts glide into the winter stillness that settles on St. Cuthbert's Abbey. December has iced the cloister ponds, the last apples long since fermented to respectable cider, and the cold air sounds like distant parchment, crisp, ready, reluctant to bend. Tonight, we idle through the arithmetic of dwindling candles, an unexpected partnership with a very punctual owl, and a blustery laundry catastrophe so tame it barely counts as drama. Nothing here will hurry you. Each moment slips past as slowly as thaw drips from a north-facing eave, and every event arrives cushioned in prayer, porridge, and the promise of another nap. In through the nose, harsh with frost, out through the lips, soft as psalmody, and follow me once more where boredom is the most dependable compass. Chapter 136, Monday. Candlemas -53. And counting cold makes mathematicians of monks. Brother Simon unveils his newest abacus, rows of split hazelnuts tracking candle inventory to Candlemas, 2 February. Latest tally, 49 standard tapers, 7 dogpaw hybrids, and an experimental nettle wax log the size of a respectable carrot. Result: deficit, 8 light days. Solutions proposed: ember sharing. 3 monks chant by single flame. Hugo enthusiastic, choristers less so. Wax stretchers. Thin the wicks, double the smoke, halve the glare. Beatrice predicts headaches. Sunrise sprints. Copy faster while daylight lasts. Cedric's quill trembles at the thought. Abbot requests a committee report by vespers. Monasteries sighs as one, dawn cold and candle poor. Chapter 137. Tuesday. Owl Post and the Ledger of Late Letters, Peregrine's Tower Owl, officially unnamed but widely called Stairmaster, has taken to loitering at the scriptorium window, blinking judgment upon loose parchment. Noticing this, Peregrine lashes a half-ounce letter to the bird's leg, addressed to Lindisfarne's cellarer. Urgent request: spare wax. Miracle of mundanity. Owl lifts off, flaps downwind, and by none a reply arrives in the same talon. Yes, they can spare a small keg of beeswax chips delivery by Epiphany. Simon, witnessing data travel faster than a donkey, updates the inventory with breathless notation. 1 owl day equals 3 courier days. Investigate scalable model. Abbot notes that scaling owls poses theological and logistical hurdles, but deems the pilot program edifying. Chapter 138, Wednesday. Laundry Day. Meets the north wind every other week. The novices haul baskets to the river's ice-rimmed edge, breaking crust with paddles before dunking tunics and towels. Today, however, the wind whips from the Norse side of nowhere, snatching washed garments off lines faster than psalms off tongues. First casualty: Cedric's only unfaded scapula lifted like a kite, plastered against bell tower louvres. Second, Hugo's practice cowl, briefly observed gliding east like a moody albatross. Third, an entire sheet used for winter insulation that sails clear over the orchard wall, scaring U-47 into an unheard-of gallop. Recovery posse, you, Cedric, novice Thomas, arms itself with poles and optimism. After an hour, Hugo's cowl retrieved from elm top, redolent of resin and regret. The sheet, now part hay bale, part textile, dragged home and rechristened rustic canopy. Cedric's scapula remains on bell tower, flapping penitentially. Simon writes it into the bell schedule. Additional chime at Wynn's discretion. Chapter 139, Thursday. The Great Soap, Heist Laundry Fiasco reveals soap shortage. Beatrice confesses she has been bartering lavender lye cakes with Windlesham, midwives in exchange for fennel seeds, culinary research. Simon documents the barter, concludes soap depreciation endangers both linens and souls. Emergency remedy, brew a fresh batch. Recipe, wood ash, rendered sheep tallow, handful of stale ale for foaming friendliness. Godfrey supervises cauldron. You stir clockwise, Cedric counter-clockwise, prevents heresy. Result 17 squat bars, speckled grey, smelling faintly of penance and goat. Hugo composes jingle for proper soap allocation. Monks vote unanimously not to sing it. Peace reigns. Greetings, midnight hitchhiker. Tuck the quilt under your chin until only nose and curiosity remain visible. Dim the last lamp to the faint purr of ember red, and let us shuffle once more through St. Cuthbert's echoing corridors. November has tiptoed in wearing a cloak stitched from chill and chimney smoke. Every breath indoors now qualifies as central heating. Tonight we drift through quiet frosts, a minor quill-related uprising, and the gentle catastrophe of one scholarly tabby who believed every book deserved to be slept on, open, of course, for maximum theological osmosis. No alarms will sound, well, except the one bell that always groans off-key at prime, and the liveliest drama involves feathers, wax, and the eternal question, is that cat snoring in Gregorian or plain common? One slow inhale, one slower exhale, watch it cloud, and follow me where boredom bedazzles itself with a sugar dusting of snow. Chapter 129. Monday, the first frost rolls out. Its white carpet, matins ends beneath breath cloud halos. When the choir files into the garth, grass blades glint like tiny reliquaries. Peregrine observes that frost is God's way of gilding weeds for free. Simon marks the remark, poetic, fiscally accurate. Breakfast porridge receives celebratory raisins. Frost bonus, the abbot calls it. Godfrey claims raisins improve theological retention. Athelred challenges for citation. Debate freezes mid-sentence when everyone notices steam rising from bowls, like incense trying to re-enlist work period. Window transparency audit, you, Cedric, and layman. Walter scrape condensation from medieval glass, whose clarity ranks somewhere between pond water and nostalgia. Every pane cleared reveals the same scene, gardens sleeping beneath lacework ice. Nothing moves except one philosophically inclined robin who tilts its head as if deciding whether monks count as migratory. Chapter 130, Tuesday. Feather quarrel in the scriptorium with cold comes brittle quills. Simon distributes new goose feathers, premium stock, tapered like angel wing tips. Within moments, Brother Peregrine snaps the nib on a particularly smug pea, and Cedric's quill splinters attempting an ambitious unsile O. Tempers warm the room faster than brazier. Simon proposes rotating community quill pool. Peregrine counters with guild-level charter on feather stewardship. Cedric suggests binding the charter in leather, quickly realizing that would cost more quills. You draft a compromise, a chalkboard ledger titled Feather Sins and Penances. Offenders must copy Psalm 131, Lord, my heart is not proud, with whichever stub they mangled. The abbot approves, Hugo composes mocking jingle to remind compliance, and peace descends, at least until tomorrow's S takes a wrong curve. Chapter 131, Wednesday, Candle Capades and the Wax That Went. Walking inventory predicts a tallow deficit by Epiphany, even with Beatrice's nettle oil hybrids. Godfrey proposes migrating spare wax from the shrine votives after curfew. Saints won't mind a trim. Bishop William is consulted by letter, response unhelpfully poetic. Borrow light wisely, return in brighter deeds. Translation, maybe. Thus a discreet after-compline operation commences. You, Beatrice, and Cedric, melt stub, ends into a cauldron nicknamed Our Lady of Perpetual Drips. The mixture oozes along the hearth, escapes, and leaves a pilgrim trail across tile. Pilgrim the dog investigates, acquires waxy socks and patters, luminous paw prints the length of the south aisle. Simon photographs the evidence onto parchment, ink outline, of course. Abbot sighs but concedes the prints look vaguely constellational, calls them Canis Minor. Wax retrieved, remelted, poured into new moulds, shaped, ironically, like dog paws. Candle crisis for the moment, pause ed. Chapter 132. Thursday. The cat and the Psalter enter scribe, a striped barn cat of average purr and above-average entitlement. During terce, she slinks into scriptorium seeking heat and holiness. Finding both in a half-illuminated Psalter, she circles 3 times, Trinitarian no doubt, and reclines squarely atop Psalm 23, humming the feline equivalent of green pasture satisfaction. Attempts to remove her fail. Claws anchor into margin dangerously close to your best vine work. Cedric fetches saucer of leftover raisin milk. Scribe glances but remains monastic. Finally, Beatrice wafts pinch of catmint, scribe lifts eyelids, performs slow-motion knead, and lumbers off, leaving perfect imprint of whiskers in still damp rubrication. Simon examines damage, pronounces it felicitous marginal beast, decides future readers will thank the Abbey for zoological authenticity. Scribe promoted to assistant illuminator, furry division. Chapter 133. Friday. Anatomy of a minor, sniffle cold dormitories, birth, sniffles. Brother Oswin sneezes during Lauds, unleashing echo that flutters choir stall dust. Sister Joan decrees, time honey tonic, distributes pewter cups. Pilgrim laps spilled drops, sneezes in canine hexachord. Simon fears outbreak, threatens copy schedule. Calculates productivity drop proportional to sneeze decibels. Hugo seizing excuse, schedules respiratory polyphony practice. Monks rehearse humming psalms through closed mouths to limit drafts. Result resembles hive of pious bees. Musically questionable, medically irrelevant, spiritually hilarious. Evening finds symptoms fading, or monks perfecting stealth sneeze technique. Joan satisfied. Simon logs 0 vellum casualties. Hugo contemplates. B chant encore. Chapter 134, Saturday. The wall that wanted attention. Walter's temporary sign over compromised beam finally loses battle with gravity. During sext, a low cruk echoes. Dust sifts like pepper. No collapse, just dramatic request for reinforcement. Repair squad rallies. Beams braced with oak strut filched, legally, from cider barrel crate. Cedric, foot on ladder rung, recites extempore. Litany to St. Joseph, patron of carpenters. Walter hammers in rhythm. You shove wedges, sweating more from prayer than effort. At last the wall sighs into alignment, as if acknowledging applause it doesn't quite deserve. Sign reinstalled reading, leaner, not meaner, but still don't trust it. Chapter 135, Sunday, Frostfire, Vespers and the Dragon Paw, Revelation, Evening Frost Feathers, Cloister Windows. Abbot decides to combine heat conservation with morale by moving Vespers to refectory where hearth licks newly split logs. Candles cast dog-paw silhouettes that dance up rafters like playful chimera. Hugo leads chant in a comfortable low key, call it tepid major. Mid-Psalm 141 scribe glides in, settles beside pilgrim, tail curling around candlelight. The fire pops, sparks mimic tiny dragons. Per habit, you sketch the tableau on stray scrap, canine prints, feline shade, dragon sparks. It looks impossibly like friendship. After dismissal, you tack sketch onto crack ledger board. Cedric laughs, declares it best caution sign yet. All creatures mind the walls. Simon leaves a silent thumb up, highest praise from the order of nitpickers. Night deepens. Wind noses every shutter but finds them fast. Frost grows brighter under half moon. Boredom dons a silver cloak. You slide into straw bed, blanket to chin, feeling very slightly heroic for having strengthened a wall, wrangled a cat, and outrun a candle puddle, heroics measured in medieval millimeters. Sleep drifts near, soft as scribes' whisker prints. Let it settle. Dawn will tap a cold finger soon enough, and you'll greet it armed with warmer quills, thriftier candles, sturdier beams, and, if rumour holds, a piglet rehearsal in F natural. For now, exhale. The Abbey watches over you, counting every crack so you don't have to. Rain finished its tantrum, but the Abbey walls did not approve of the performance. Mortar crumbs decorate the cloister like wheaten dandruff. Thus begins Census Fracturarum, crack counting day. Armed with charcoal, you, Cedric, and Carpenter. Walter pace the perimeters. Each fracture earns a worried tick mark, as though the stone were sitting an exam it never studied for. Sister Beatrice appears with herbal paste, promising to encourage cohesion. Cedric whispers it looks like porridge that lost a bet. You daub it anyway. Walls emit no opinion. By none, the tally stands at 117 fissures, 3 wobbling lintels, and 1 gargoyle whose nose now points due west instead of heavenward. Walter murmurs that if faith moves mountains, it could at least nudge a wall back into plumb. Repairs scheduled for after the feast of St. Luke, or before gravity files a complaint, whichever arrives first. Chapter 118, Wednesday, Fireside Symposium on Utterly Minor Matters. First true chill slides under doors. Abbot declares the inaugural lighting of the great hearth, a ceremony whose grandeur is limited only by the smallness of the hearth. Monks cluster like cautious moths, palms hovering over warmth, as though warming were a liturgical gesture. Brother Godfrey introduces the evening's entertainment, a recitation of the acts of the local roof, a chronicle of leaks catalogued since Easter. Hugo supplies musical underscoring, 1 plaintive drone on a reed pipe every time the word drip appears. The performance lasts 27 drips. Applause is silent but unanimous. The pipe retires victorious. You sip watered cider, listen to sparks click upward, and feel boredom drape itself across your shoulders like a wool cloak that perfectly fits. Chapter 119, Thursday, Choir Practice. Interrupted by a piglet. With opinions, Michaelmas cheese crumbs have attracted piglets from the tenant farm. One particularly enterprising runt pink, round, and self-important, waddles through an open side door just as Hugo guides the altos through a difficult melisma on Gaude Mater. The piglet squeals on the downbeat, discovers acoustics, and proceeds to accompany every phrase with a note best described as sharpish enthusiasm. Monks freeze, some mid-Latin, lips rounded like punctuation. Hugo's face cycles through ecclesiastical shades before landing on resigned bemusement. Brother Athelred quotes Psalm 98, "Make a joyful noise." Argument lost. Cedric gently ushers the porcine soloist out, but not before it ends with a triumphant grunt in perfect unison. Rumour claims the note was an F natural. Simon records F-ish. Chapter 120, Friday. The Piglet. Penitential parade rule demands discipline, and discipline loves ceremony. After prime, the piglet, now nicknamed Chanticleer, species notwithstanding, is escorted back to the farmyard in a procession of 3. Cedric, yourself, and Pilgrim the dog acting as disinterested marshal. Along the path, Brother Cedric delivers a homily on the virtue of place, mostly for the pig's ears, but partly for yours. Chanticleer listens, blinks, and deposits a theological rebuttal. On Walter's new boots, Pilgrim sniffs, finds argument persuasive. You return minus pig, but plus perspective. Sometimes even livestock wants an encore. Chapter 121, Saturday. The mulled ink incident autumn means colder ink pots. Simon suggests warming the oak gall solution gently over a candle. You oblige, but Godfrey ambles by with a steaming jug of fresh mulled cider. One distracted elbow, one spilled ladle, and the ink acquires notes of clove and apple. Panic, followed by unexpected beauty. Letters emerge a shade warmer, almost chestnut. Simon sniffs page, initially horrified, then allows that theological margins might benefit from seasonal aroma. He christens the experiment Scriptura Calda and mandates controlled trials. By Vespers, the scriptorium smells like a spiced charter for peace. No one complains. Quills mimic cinnamon sticks anyway. Chapter 122, Sunday, St. Luke's Feast and the Sermon of 7, Similes, Feast of the Evangelist. Nave dressed in lanterns recycled from the flood vigil, now painted in blues to match Luke's quill. Abbott's sermon employs precisely 7 similes comparing spiritual vigilance to mundane tasks, sharpening scythes, mending socks, stirring porridge, patching walls, herding bees, counting cracks, and, yes, tuning piglets. Congregation nods. Though Cedric later argues a piglet is less simile, more cautionary footnote. Debate withers under second helpings of honey-glazed carrots. Evening recreation permits modest storytelling. Peregrine recounts Stella Noctis discoveries. Severin's silver parchment is produced, moon brews still visible. Hugo asks if it might foretell weather. Peregrine shrugs, claims the flower predicts naps. Chapter 123, Monday, first frost proper, and the test of timber's temperature drops enough to crust puddles. Walter revisits the crack roster with hammer, wedges, and optimism. You steady ladder while he taps wooden shims into gaps so narrow they qualify as theoretical. Each tap releases a puff of powdered mortar. The walls sigh of surrender. At midday, a plank on the West Range groans like a Gregorian bass, then splits. Inspection reveals woodworm settlement older than half the novices. Emergency solution, nail a sign, lean, not on thine own understanding or this beam. Repairs postponed until lumber arrives from Windlesham, assuming they're Sawyer sobers before Advent. Chapter 124, Tuesday, Night, Lecture on Entirely Forgettable. Saint's brother Athelred inaugurates a winter series called Figures of Faint Interest. Saints whose miracles were charitably administrative. Tonight, Saint Quintulus of Lyon, patron of ledger line accuracy. His sole recorded wonder was reconciling a double-entry account to the penny during a solar eclipse. Monks listen with rapt stupefaction. You feel eyelids descend like portcullis. At conclusion, Athelred quizzes the audience. No one recalls the Saint's feast day, including Athelred. He praises collective humility for not presuming knowledge. You drift to sell hearing, Pilgrim the dog, snore syncopation with distant owls. If boredom were a blanket, it would be quilted tonight. Chapter 125, Wednesday. The candle short calculation Simon's abacus clicks. Projected candle consumption to Epiphany exceeds supplies by 17 tapers. Panic level, measured hand-wringing. Options, stretch wicks thinner, enforce earlier bedtimes, or harvest more tallow, requiring negotiation with monastery pigs, delicate. Beatrice proposes mixing beeswax with rendered nettle oil for economy candles. Trial batch burns faintly, herbal, soot-poor but serviceable. Abbot approves limited run, instructs choir to rehearse quieter, so flame needn't dance violently. Hugo contemplates pianissimo as penitence. Chapter 126, Thursday, an afternoon of otherwise unrecorded repairs. No feast, no visitor, no storm. You patch parchment thongs on binding spines, Cedric oils door hinges, Peregrine straightens the Northfield scarecrow's halo of straw, Pilgrim rediscovers thornbush, regrets instantly, Sister Joan removes quills from paw, quoting Job on transitory, suffering. At dusk, Chanticleer the piglet reappears at cloister gate, squeals one decisive note, and departs. Foretelling? Perhaps tomorrow's porridge will scorch. You log event in marginal shorthand. Visited by swine. Seed half. Simon nods, updates, pitch pipe. Chapter 127, Friday, Cheese Guild, Public Edition, First Tithe of Cheese Distribution Day. Wheels unveiled in refectory after dinner. Monks sample in reverent hush, punctuated by involuntary delight, noises that skirt rule of silence. The blue Sanctus Azure proves popular. Some claim it sings hymn tones on the tongue. Cedric suggests pairing notes to psalms, mature cheddar for penitential melodies, young cheese for alleluias. Hugo considers Athelred threatens lecture on gluttony, discussion shelved under research. You note how quietly joy sits when well fed. A thaw arrives like a sloppy kiss. Snowmelt seeps beneath the scriptorium door, threatening parchments with premature baptism. Emergency measures elevate desks on bricks, redirect drips with carefully placed gutters fashioned from split reeds. And optimism. Meanwhile, the cloister garden resembles a medieval soup. Boots, suction mud, earthworms rejoice. Sister Beatrice plots drainage with the strategic mind of a Norman general. You volunteer to dig trenches. Each spadeful of soil squelches a hymn. Night brings wind and the unmistakable scent of wet wood smoke. Brother Godfrey paces, calculating drying times for barley barely out of storage. Mould, he mutters, as though it were a demon requiring exorcism. Chapter 31, Tuesday, Dawn, the Plague. That wasn't Brother Thomas, he of the prodigal pancake, collapses at prime, feverish. Panic, prickles, memories of distant pestilence haunt every medieval mind. Infirmary quarantine initiates, Thomas isolated, visitors masked with cloths soaked in rosemary vinegar, the herbal equivalent of crossing fingers. Sister Joan conducts triage while you document symptoms. Thankfully, By Compline the fever breaks, likely a common cold in dramatic costume. Abbey exhales in silent relief. Thomas receives extra honey water and unofficial status as Lenten martyr. Chapter 32. Wednesday. Psalms in the Rain Precentor. Hugo insists choir continue practicing outdoors for acoustic variety. Rain patters hoods and vellum alike. Voices mingle with thunder, producing a mass that sounds like angels gargling. Bishop William would either weep with joy or censure with footnotes. You can't decide which. Back inside, robes steam beside hearths. Godfrey distributes a thimble of near beer for health. Spirits climb just high enough to notice hunger descending. Fish tonight, fish tomorrow, fish until the resurrection. Chapter 33. Thursday night. Dream of the library, sleep, eludes you so you wander the dark corridors, per rule, mutely. The library door, normally barred after Compline, stands ajar, hinges swollen from damp. Candles out, but moonlight pools on reading desks. Books breathe dust and possibility. You run a finger along the spine of Gregory's dialogues, feel parchment shiver under touch. In the gleam you imagine future centuries where books multiply like stars, where sleepers summon any text at a gesture. The thought dazzles, then intimidates. Abundance can drown as surely as scarcity starves. You close the door gently, choosing the presence, manageable poverty. Chapter 34. Friday, fishless, fish day, supply wagon from Lindisfarne delayed by flooded roads. Pantry officially fishless. Lent forbids meat. Options narrow to vegetables pickled since last Michaelmas. The kitchen conjures turnip à la pénitent and watercress surprise. Surprise, no watercress. Monks receive the news with stoic nods and louder stomachs. Brother Cedric jokes that manna may yet fall. Simon corrects his exegesis. Everyone laughs in scandalous unison. Hunger apparently silences chapter house rivalries. Evening message from the cellarer. Wagon expected tomorrow. Joy measured, but palpable. Abbot permits an extra psalm of thanksgiving, sung softly to conserve energy. Chapter 35. Saturday, return of plenty, relatively speaking. Wagon arrives at dawn. Axles crusted with mud, driver cursing geography. Barrels of dried cod and sacks of oats unload into stores. Godfrey almost kisses a cask. Beatrice salvages watercress from beneath collapsed crates. Miracle granted. Lunch features cod stew, so salty you could brine humility in it. Still, protein revives morale. Brother Thomas, fully recovered, leads post-meal reading of St. Paul's shipwreck, timing dramatic pauses to cod burps. Abbey consensus: never again underestimate the power of beans. Chapter 36. Sunday, mid-Lent, Rose Day, Litere. Sunday offers a lilting break. Pink vestments, a splash of fresh flowers in the nave, and permission for one small indulgence. The kitchen unveils custard of almond milk sweetened with a thimble of honey. The taste is pure Easter preview, eyes close in gratitude. During recreation hour, Martin of Lincoln finally departs, bound for Durham with a lighter pack and heavier heart, leaving behind a gift, a tiny carved boxwood dragon bookmark for you. To mind the margins, he says with wink. You slip it into your psalter, flattered beyond humility's safe range. Sunset paints Abbey walls rose gold. Snowdrops poke through thawing soil, white bells rung by the first invisible breeze of spring. You realize Lent is half over. Hope buds quietly, like a note in your pocket nobody's read yet. Back in your cell, you hold the dragon bookmark to the lamplight. Its grin matches your own. You whisper a thanks meant for Martin, the Abbey, and the gentle monotony cradling you towards sleep. Candle gutters, darkness folds. Bells wait, patient as always, to shepherd the next day. Part 5, Spring Digging, Scribal Showdowns and the Great Monastic Chess Tournament Opening. Whisper good evening, gentle insomniac. Draw the blanket tighter, let the world contract to the slow pulse of your breathing, and prepare to saunter once more through St. Cuthbert's. Abbey now sliding from Lent's lean greys towards spring's tentative greens. Tonight brings planting, parchment rivalry, and a pastime so illicitly exciting it requires 10 separate footnotes of justification. Chess. Chapter 37. Monday, welcome vernal equinox at prime. The abbot proclaims the equinox with a smile, so small you nearly miss it. Daylight finally outnumbers darkness, match point to creation. Breakfast remains austere, oat gruel splash of yesterday's water, yet a shaft of sunrise crosses the refectory table like gold thread stitched through. Burlap, pot work assignment, garden resurrection. You, Sister Beatrice, and half the lay brothers wield spades against soil still clinging to winter. Earthworms surface in mild outrage, skylarks argue overhead, tasks split, digging seedbeds, spreading compost, a perfume only monks could tolerate, and erecting willow hurdles to defend seedlings from U-47's gastronomic curiosity. Beatrice entrusts you with peas. She presses 6 wizened seeds into your palm as though they're relics. Faith is a buried seed, she murmurs, a proverb older than the Abbey. You plant them in rows straighter than a penitent's posture, tamp the soil, and sprinkle a prayer each time your fingers close. Settle once more, sleepless friend, and let the restless wind of 1288 rattle your window instead of your nerves. Tonight we slip back into St. Cuthbert's Abbey as winter loosens its grip. Lent tiptoes in wearing a frown, and a single over-enthusiastic pilgrim derails the community's concept of normal, which, as you know by now, is delightfully dull to begin with. Chapter 25. Shrove. Tuesday, the pancake that got away. Snow still freckles the cloister garth, yet the calendar insists carnival has arrived. Monks do not party, they prepare. So the morning features an inventory of every crumb of animal fat destined for one last pre-Lenten hurrah in the form of griddle cakes. Brother Godfrey commandeers the kitchen hearth. Batter, barley flour, eggs from Windlesham, the final spoon of tallow, spits merrily on iron. One cake performs a valiant leap, lands on the floor, and is instantly christened the prodigal flapjack. Custom decrees the youngest novice, poor Brother Thomas, must chase it before the devil claims the grease. He catches it, dusts it, eats it, looks vaguely haunted. At Vespers, the abbot delivers the annual dust and ashes reminder, but the refectory still smells like forbidden butter. You lick a final crumb from your thumb and wave farewell to culinary joy until Easter. Bells toll. Butter sulks off stage. Chapter 26. Ash. Wednesday. Soot. Silence. Self-inventory. Matins feels heavier, as though the candles themselves repent of burning. After prime, monks line up before the abbot, who thumbs a cross of ash onto each tonsure, murmuring, "Memento quia pulvis es." The soot tickles, nobody dares sneeze, breakfast shrinks to water, and a crust so penitential it seems pre-chewed by job. Conversation abandons the refectory entirely. Even Brother Athelred's scripture reading sounds thinner, as though vowels themselves are fasting. Mid-morning, you're assigned to the cellar as ledger, erasing meat from upcoming menus and penciling in herring, so often you start adding gills to your capital H's. The cellar smells of damp hope and half-empty casks. You hum a psalm about exile. The echo hums back, slightly off-key. Chapter 27, Thursday. Candle making round 2. With daylight still meagre, candles remain a holy necessity. You, Cedric, and Sister Beatrice staff the tallow pots like alchemists forced to use lard. Strips of rush are dipped, cooled, dipped again, building layers the way patients build saints, slow, sticky, inevitably smoky. Cedric invents a game, whom will each candle illuminate? He names yours for Brother Simon. May this light soften his proofreading heart. You counter by dedicating Cedric's to you, 47. Perhaps she'll stop headbutting eternity. Beatrice, practical, christens hers for whomever walk. The midnight corridor and stubs a toe, charity in wax form. By none 62 tapers gleam on wooden racks like pale soldiers awaiting ordination. Chapter 28. A pilgrim arrives, too loud for Lent at dusk. Gates creak open for a lone. Traveller clad in patched wool, carrying a staff crusted with pilgrimage badges. He introduces himself loudly as Martin of Lincoln, collector of relics, teller of tales, and survivor of 8 near shipwrecks so far. Hospitaller Peregrine winces. Lent prefers whispers. Nevertheless, hospitality is law. Martin is granted the guest cell and a supper of pea broth, which he compliments as though it were royal venison. He produces from various pouches alleged relics, a feather from the Archangel's second cousin, a molar of St. Apollonia, still minty, and, disturbingly, a small glass vial labelled Tear of Eve. Brother Athelred's eyebrow ascends to the choir loft. The abbot schedules an authenticity interview for morning. Martin grins, toothy as his artifacts. Chapter 29. Friday. Interrogating holiness. After Lauds, Martin sits in the chapter house under stained glass judgment. The abbot, flanked by Simon and Beatrice, representing science-ish, examines each relic. Feather, dyed goose quill. Verdict, souvenir, Apollonia's molar, provenance unclear. But tests confirm it is indeed a human tooth, whether saintly or simply dental calamity remains unprovable. Verdict, inconclusive but unsettling. Stored in lead box labelled Caveat Dens, Tear of Eve. Water with a suspicious hint of honey. Martin claims sweetness signifies Edenic purity. Beatrice counters that it signifies porcelain wax. Verdict, sentimental sugar water. The abbot rules that while none of the items constitute fraud, intent is pious, if impractical. They also fail canonical muster. Martin accepts the decision cheerfully, offering to donate everything anyway. The abbot declines politely but firmly. Storerooms are finite, superstition infinite. Martin stays 3 days as guest, trading seafaring anecdotes for warm stables. His laughter ricochets off fasting walls, a reminder that joy, too, can mortify. Pride